Have you ever looked at the person sleeping next to you and wondered if you truly know them at all? After 12 years together in our Brooklyn Heights apartment, with its picture-perfect view of the Statue of Liberty on clear days and our neighbor's satellite dish on most others, I thought I knew everything there was to know about Michael. That illusion shattered on a Sunday morning. I was wrestling with a mountain of paperwork for our annual IRS tax filing, a task I always procrastinate on because, let's be honest, who enjoys dancing with spreadsheets and receipts? When I found it, tucked inside an old folder was a bank statement for an account I'd never seen before. The balance was enough to cover 3 years of our steep New York rent. I just froze, staring at that piece of paper as if it held the secrets to the universe. You know that sinking feeling when you realize you're the last person to get in on a crucial piece of gossip? It was that, magnified by 1,000. My mind immediately started generating a screenplay of worst-case scenarios, a frantic list of plausible and not-so-plausible reasons for a mystery bank account. Could it be a joint fund he set up and somehow forgot to mention for over a decade? Was it an absurdly large surprise gift for our upcoming anniversary, a gift worth $180,000? Or, and my stomach churned at this, did he have a second family tucked away in the Poconos, complete with 2 kids and a golden retriever? Maybe it was a retirement fund he never bothered to discuss with me. The most ridiculous thought was that he was some kind of international spy. Mike, the man who calls me into the bathroom to deal with a spider. All those years, Michael had been the king of frugality, giving me grief any time I bought a new dress or suggested we try a slightly fancier restaurant for dinner. "We have to save, Jess," he'd always say, all while quietly building a small fortune behind my back. Our last argument had been over a Kate Spade bag I'd bought during a Memorial Day sale. "Did you really need another bag, Jess?" he'd asked, exasperated. Meanwhile, he was socking away the equivalent of the entire Kate Spade fall collection every few months. So, what was my next move? A dramatic confrontation or a covert investigation? I chose the latter. After all, maybe there was a perfectly logical explanation for my husband hiding an obscene amount of money from me for 12 years. And maybe the New York Jets will win the Super Bowl this year without a single turnover. The moment Michael left for his architecture firm on Monday, my detective mission began. My investigation kit was laughably low-tech, a small notebook I got from a holiday office Secret Santa, a toy magnifying glass that came with my nephew's science magazine, which magnified absolutely nothing, and a very large, very strong cup of coffee. I, Jessica Miller, a 38-year-old marketing manager for a publishing house, was now the Nancy Drew of Brooklyn Heights. I started in his home office, that little corner of our living room he'd declared his sacrosanct creative space. Apparently, that sanctity extended to hiding financial documents between blueprints for buildings that never got off the ground. The top drawer of his desk was locked, a dead giveaway of guilt, according to every episode of Law & Order I've ever seen. The key, in a stroke of brilliant originality, was hidden right under his keyboard. Inside that drawer was a blue file folder labeled simply Personal Documents. How could anything be that personal after 12 years of marriage? The answer was laid out in black and white. Years of statements, records of monthly wire transfers, and a small ledger filled with his neat, precise handwriting. The kind of script that only an architect could have. I felt a chill run down my spine when I saw the date of the very first deposit. It was 3 months after our wedding. 3 months. We hadn't even finished sending out our thank you cards, and he was already constructing a secret financial life. I was so engrossed in this betrayal that I didn't hear the front door unlock. "Jess, you home?" Michael's voice made me jump, the folder still wide open on my lap, my heart pounding against my ribs. In the office," I called back, trying to sound casual as I fumbled to shove the papers back into the folder with all the grace of a stampede. When Michael appeared in the doorway, he raised an eyebrow, seeing me at his desk. "Forgot the presentation for my client. What are you doing?" I flashed a smile that felt more like a grimace, probably looking like a deranged toothpaste commercial model. "Just looking for a paperclip, for clipping papers." He shot me a suspicious look, grabbed a folder from the printer, and headed out again. That was too close. As the door clicked shut, I took a deep breath and confronted a terrifying new reality. The person I'd shared my bed with for over a decade was a complete stranger. How had I never seen it? And more importantly, what else was he hiding? The following Saturday, my plan went into action. Normally, a precious weekend morning would be reserved for binge-watching the latest Netflix hit or meeting my friends for brunch at that secret spot in Cobble Hill that's always too crowded. But this weekend, I had a mission. Michael's unshakable Saturday ritual was an 8 a.m. jog through Brooklyn Bridge Park, a habit he claimed was responsible for maintaining his 30s physique, even though we were both pushing 40. This time, I decided to follow him. My disguise was something out of a bad spy movie: oversized Jackie O sunglasses I bought from a street vendor, a floppy beach hat that was completely out of season, and a faded Bonnaroo 2011 t-shirt. If the NYPD were looking for a suspicious person that morning, I'd be their prime suspect. I kept a safe distance as he walked down Montague Street. To my surprise, he didn't head towards the park's running path at all. Instead, he took a sharp turn and walked directly into a Chase Bank branch. This was, to say the least, bizarre behavior for someone who was supposedly about to go for a run. I quickly ducked into the coffee shop across the street, ordering a $5 cappuccino I didn't even touch as I staked out the bank's entrance. 40 minutes later, Michael emerged, a look of quiet satisfaction on his face and a briefcase in his hand. A briefcase I had never seen before. A briefcase that certainly didn't contain running shoes. Back at home, I quickly changed and was pretending to be engrossed in a TV show when he walked in, feigning a post-workout glow. "How was the run?" I asked, my voice dripping with an innocence I didn't feel. "Great," he said, a little too brightly. "Really cleared my head. Managed to get a solid 3 miles in," he answered without a flicker of hesitation, stashing the mysterious briefcase in his office. The lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly it made me wonder how many other falsehoods I had unknowingly swallowed over the course of our marriage. That evening, he came home with a bouquet of my favorite peonies and 2 tickets to see Billy Joel at Madison Square Garden. "Surprise, honey, I know how much you wanted to go." I allowed myself to sink into the joy of the moment, pretending I didn't know this grand gesture was likely funded by his secret stash. As we ate the gourmet pizza he'd brought home from Lucali, I smiled, entertaining the thought that maybe he had dipped into his hidden funds just to make me happy. But one question still echoed in the back of my mind. Why would someone hide so much money from the person they claimed to love? And the more unsettling follow-up, what was I supposed to do now that I knew? Now this is the part of the story where things get complicated. You see, while I was playing detective and uncovering Michael's financial betrayal, I was wrestling with a massive secret of my own. In what has to be the universe's most twisted joke, my shock at my husband's financial infidelity was profoundly hypocritical. I was also hiding money, and my secret was 10 times bigger than his. It all started nearly a decade ago, on a visit to my Grandma Eleanor in the Hudson Valley. Grandma has the kind of wisdom that only comes from a long life and a daily glass of iced tea that's stronger than you'd expect. "Jessica, my dear," she'd said, knitting something that was supposed to be a scarf, but looked more like a bath mat. "A woman without her own nest egg is like a ship without a rudder. Your grandfather never knew the full extent of my savings. It's how I paid for your uncle's college tuition after he lost a fortune on a sure thing during the dot-com bust." Her words followed me all the way back to the city. At the time, Michael and I had only been married for 2 years, but he was already showing signs of a financial control that I, in my newlywed haze, had mistaken for caring about our future. I opened a digital bank account with one of those new fintech startups, the kind with no fees and a slick, colorful debit card, and began to divert small, untraceable amounts of cash. A 20 from the grocery budget here, 100 there. Money I made from freelance copy editing for a friend's startup, cash back from credit card rewards, change I saved in a jar. It was all pocket change, amounts so small they wouldn't register on the meticulous budget spreadsheets Michael maintained. That tiny seed of an idea, watered by a growing distrust in my marriage, grew into a formidable financial tree. Over the years, I transformed from a cautious saver into a savvy investor. Who would have thought that all those financial advice YouTube channels I watched secretly in the bathroom, blaming my long absences on stomach issues, would actually pay off? I devoured information on index funds, real estate investment trusts, and blue-chip stocks. While Michael was lecturing me about buying a new dress for my cousin's wedding, "You already have dozens of dresses, Jess," I was secretly tracking the performance of my Nvidia shares. When he complained about the price of movie tickets, $50 for a movie that will be on HBO in 3 months, I was mentally calculating the yield on my latest investment in U.S. Treasury bonds. The very same woman who acted heartbroken over not being able to afford a pair of Stuart Weitzman shoes had just put a significant sum into a high-yield mutual fund. I was living a financial double life so complex it would have made a CIA agent proud. Was this something all women did, or was I venturing into dangerous territory in my marriage? Hiding a small fortune for 10 years requires an ironclad system and nerves of steel. My method was straightforward but effective. All bank communications were sent to a secret email address I only ever accessed on my work computer. I opted for e-statements exclusively, and a separate credit card was tucked away inside a dense, boring textbook on digital marketing that sat on my office shelf, guaranteed to never be borrowed. Any purchases on that card? They were easily explained away. "It's for a client dinner," I'd say. Or, "We're sponsoring a table at a charity gala for work." Or, "It's for a professional development workshop." These were the small, white lies that, brick by brick, constructed a fortress of deceit over the years. But can you really blame me? Michael was playing the exact same game, just as it turned out, with far less financial acumen. Claire, my best friend since our days at NYU, was the only soul who knew my secret. "Are you building a retirement fund or planning a dramatic escape to another country?" she'd ask over espresso martinis during our monthly girls' nights. The truth was, I didn't know myself. One part of me felt incredibly empowered, like an international spy masquerading as a bored marketing manager. Another part was eaten away by guilt every time Michael talked about our money or our future. There were heart-stopping moments when I was nearly caught. Like the time he grabbed my phone to look up a restaurant and a notification from my investment app flashed across the screen. I was saved only by the phone's battery dying at that exact second. Thank you, Apple. Or the time he found a transfer receipt in my coat pocket, which I quickly explained away as, "It's a group collection from work for our boss's wedding gift." With every near miss, my heart hammered like I'd just run the New York City Marathon, and I'd swear to myself I would finally come clean. But I never did. The most bizarre part was recognizing Michael's own strange financial behavior and being completely unable to call him out on it. After all, what moral high ground did I have? When he shot down that trip to Paris we'd always dreamed of, "This year is just too tight, Jess, maybe next year." I knew he was lying, but I had to bite my tongue because I was lying too. When we argued about moving out of our apartment, "The prices in the West Village are insane, we can't afford that," he was so convincing about our supposed lack of funds that I almost believed him, even though I knew that between the two of us, we had enough hidden away to make a down payment on a place on Park Avenue. We were living in a mutual, Oscar-worthy charade, each of us playing the part of the financially responsible spouse while secretly hoarding our treasures. The question that haunted me was simple. How much longer could this elaborate deception last? And if he was hiding this from me, what else was he capable of concealing? "I want to do a full analysis of your investment portfolio," said Ryan, a financial advisor Claire had recommended, as he studied the figures on my laptop screen. We were sitting in a quiet, discreet coffee shop in the financial district, far enough from our Brooklyn neighborhood to ensure we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. "For someone who started with such small contributions, you have a seriously impressive portfolio," he remarked, a look of genuine surprise on his face. According to his analysis, my secret net worth had surpassed $1.8 million. The result of a decade of consistent deposits and investments that, through a combination of obsessive research and sheer luck, had performed exceptionally well. "And your husband has no idea about any of this?" Ryan asked, his expression caught somewhere between admiration and disapproval. "None," I replied, biting back the urge to add, just like I had no idea about his secret account until last week. Some truths are best kept behind two-factor authentication. Over the following week, I became a general preparing for battle. I meticulously organized every document, statement, and trade confirmation into a crisp green folder. Michael's favorite color is blue, so the choice was deliberate. It was tabbed by asset class, index funds, tech stocks, REITs. I mentally rehearsed various scenarios for the big reveal. 1. The direct approach. So, I know about your account, and by the way, I have one too. 2. The theatrical approach. Spreading my statements across the dinner table like a royal flush in poker. 3. The passive-aggressive approach. Honey, we need to discuss your lies, but let's start with mine. Every imagined scene ended differently. In some, he was furious. In others, deeply hurt. In a few, he just laughed at the sheer cosmic irony of it all. But in none of them could I visualize what came after. How would we move on? What would this bombshell mean for the foundation of our marriage? How do you possibly rebuild trust when you've both proven to be world-class liars? The night before the planned confrontation, I accidentally left a copy of Suze Orman's latest book on his nightstand. It was probably too subtle a hint, but it was my small way of planting a seed. Over dinner, I casually brought up a friend from work who discovered her husband was hiding money. "What would you do in that situation?" I asked, pouring him another glass of wine. "It depends," Michael said after a long pause. "Maybe the guy had a good reason." Our eyes met for a tense second. Did I see a flicker of recognition in his gaze? A shadow of his own guilt? Or was it just my own paranoia, cranked up to 11 after a week of investigation? Later that night, lying beside him in the dark, I studied his profile. How did we get here? We were two people who had sworn to share a life, but were now only sharing a mortgage and a web of carefully constructed secrets. Tomorrow was D-Day, the day we would find out if 12 years of marriage was strong enough to survive a sudden, brutal dose of honesty. Because ironically, nothing tests a relationship more than finally telling the truth after years of living a lie. Sunday dawned with that crisp, golden light you only get in a New York October, the sun slanting through the blinds as the city slowly woke up. I prepared the most elaborate breakfast in the history of our weekends. Pancakes from scratch with real Vermont maple syrup, scrambled eggs with chives, freshly squeezed orange juice, and the expensive croissants from the French bakery he loves, which I pretended I'd baked myself. It was my final small lie before the avalanche of truth. The table was set with the crate and barrel placemats we got as a wedding gift and had never once used. Michael wandered into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, genuinely stunned by the morning feast. "Did I forget an anniversary?" he asked, kissing my forehead. If only he knew he was about to witness the anniversary of the end of our secret lives. "Michael, I know about the Chase account." The words tumbled out of me, sharp and sudden, just as he was spreading cream cheese on his bagel. I watched his hand freeze mid-air, the knife hovering like a paused frame in a movie. The coffee cup rattled against the saucer when he finally set it down. The color drained from his face, leaving his runner's tan looking pale and sickly. "What account?" he tried, but his voice cracked on the second word. He was a terrible actor. "The account you've been funneling money into for 12 years. The $180,000 you've been hiding while lecturing me about the cost of my haircut and my Equinox membership." My voice was steady, shockingly calm for someone whose heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. What I felt wasn't pure anger. It was a strange cocktail of relief and profound sadness, like finally untying a knot that's been so tight for so long you've gotten used to the pain. "I didn't trust you with money, Jess. You're a spender," he said, after a silence that stretched for an eternity. His voice had that same patronizing tone he used to explain why we couldn't afford to upgrade our car or why a vacation in Italy was fiscally irresponsible right now. I fought the urge to throw the orange juice in his face. I had my own confession to make after all. "I see," I said, with a calm I didn't know I possessed. "And when exactly did you decide this?" He looked away, running a hand through his hair in that familiar, nervous gesture. "Right after we got married, when you lent Claire that money without talking to me first." "Ah, yes. The great betrayal that launched a decade of financial secrecy. The $2,000 I lent my best friend for a security deposit when she was escaping a bad relationship. Money she paid back, with interest, 3 months later. To Michael, that act of friendship was apparently an unforgivable breach of financial trust. If he only knew what I was about to reveal, he might have to recalibrate his entire definition of the term. Well, since we're on the subject of trust and transparency, I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the Robinhood app, the one with the sleek interface that Michael had always dismissed as a gambling app for irresponsible millennials. I swiped to the main portfolio screen, then turned the phone to face him, watching his reaction with clinical focus. His eyebrows shot up so high they nearly vanished into his hairline. His eyes went comically wide, and his mouth formed a perfect, silent O. If we weren't in the middle of a marital crisis, the moment would have been picture-worthy. $1.8 million? He finally stammered, his voice jumping a full octave. How? When? What? I have rarely seen Michael, always so composed and articulate, rendered completely speechless. It was almost satisfying. Almost. I started a little after you did, I explained, taking a sip of my coffee with the nonchalance of someone discussing the weather. The difference is, while you were stashing cash in a low-yield savings account, I was studying the market. While you were complaining about the price of a Kate Spade bag I bought on sale, I was buying stock in their parent company, Tapestry Inc., that have seen a 300% return in the last few years. And as it turns out, I added, looking him directly in the eye, I'm a much better investor than you are a saver. I swiped through a few more screens on my phone, showcasing the diversification of my portfolio. This right here? This is the money I saved by shopping at Woodbury Common instead of the Soho boutiques you always wanted to browse. And these REITs? I started that fund with the work bonus you thought was much smaller than it actually was. Every confession felt like a physical weight being lifted from my shoulders, like I could finally breathe after holding my breath for an entire decade. It was both liberating and terrifying. The chair clattered to the floor as Michael shot to his feet, the sudden noise echoing in the silent kitchen. And then he started to laugh. Not a sound of joy, but a hysterical, broken laugh that was teetering on the edge of a complete breakdown. This whole time, while I was... He couldn't finish a sentence, the words coming out in ragged, incomplete bursts. Then a nervous laugh escaped my own lips, quickly dissolving into something closer to a sob. Why couldn't we just trust each other? What happened to us, Mike? The question came from a deep, wounded place, the part of my soul that had been guarding this painful truth for far too long. In a moment, he was on his knees in front of me, grabbing my hands. Because we both come from families who lost everything, he said, his voice raw. Because we're terrified. His words were simple, but they held the crushing weight of inherited anxieties, of financial traumas passed down through generations like a cursed heirloom. I looked at our clasped hands, at the ruins of our picture-perfect breakfast, at the emotional wreckage we had just unleashed. And yet, in the middle of that chaos, something unexpected began to surface, a chance to actually start over, with no more secrets. We spent the rest of the morning at the kitchen table, which had transformed into a war room of bank statements, investment reports, and tax returns. We were conducting a financial autopsy, cataloging the remains of a marriage that had been built on half-truths and mutual suspicion. My dad was wiped out in the 2008 crash, Michael confessed, his voice low as he sorted his papers into neat piles. He'd leveraged everything. I remember him sitting at a table, just like this one, his head in his hands, trying to figure out how to keep the house. It was a story I had never heard before, or if he had told me, I had never truly listened. My mom stashed cash all over the house for years, I countered, remembering the rolls of bills I'd found tucked inside old film canisters after she passed away. My dad had a gambling problem for a while. He bet a huge chunk of their savings on a stock tip from a friend and lost it all. These were the family histories that had secretly shaped our financial neuroses, the unspoken reasons for our destructive behavior. When I saw your account, Michael continued, his voice calmer now, I was furious for about a minute. Then I was impressed. And then I was just so ashamed. He dragged a hand over his face, suddenly looking older, wearier. Ashamed because while I was hoarding cash that was losing value to inflation, you built this. He gestured toward my neatly organized statements, complete with color-coded sticky notes. And the whole time, we lived like we were on the brink of disaster, putting off our dreams, canceling trips, delaying our lives. His voice trailed off, but I understood what he couldn't say. We had delayed living because we were both too busy bracing for a catastrophic future that existed only in our heads. Later that afternoon, as we looked at the combined total from our secret accounts, it dawned on us. We had saved more than enough for the one dream we never dared to speak aloud. Buying a house of our own, maybe in a quiet town in New Jersey, with a yard and a commute back to the city. It was the house Michael was always sketching in his notebooks, the one I had been tearing out of Architectural Digest for years. We could make an all-cash offer, he said, the numbers already turning in his head. And with our combined salaries, the property taxes and upkeep would be less than the rent we're paying now. A new feeling began to take root between us. Not trust, it was far too soon for that, but possibility. The very secrets that could have destroyed our marriage were now, somehow, becoming the foundation for a new beginning. I still wonder, did we really need to go through all of this just to learn how to be honest with each other? And have you ever realized that sometimes the secrets we keep are born from fear, not from malice? So, between the two of us, we have exactly 1,180,248, Michael announced with that infuriating architectural precision, adjusting the reading glasses he only wears when he's trying to look smart or when he's exhausted, like now. It was Tuesday night, 2 days after our mutual confession, and our living room table was covered in laptops, calculators, and a half-empty bottle of wine, because some financial planning sessions require a little lubrication. It was still sinking in that we were finally sharing everything. The feeling was bizarrely intimate, like we were financially naked with each other for the first time, even after 12 years of marriage. We need to set clear goals, I said, slipping into the marketing manager mode my team at work knows so well. I did what I do best. I made a list. 1. Down payment on a house in Montclair. 2. A fund for renovations. 3. A joint emergency fund. 4. I trailed off when I noticed Michael looking at me with a strange expression. Part amusement, part awe. What? Is there something on my face? I instinctively checked my chin for pizza sauce. Dinner had been delivery from Joe's Pizza, because who has the energy to cook after dismantling a decade of lies? Nothing, he smiled. I was just thinking about all the years I wasted your talent for financial planning. You should have been managing our money from the start. We had our first official, out-in-the-open financial disagreement at 11:42 p.m. when Michael suggested we use a portion of the money to buy a plot of land in the Catskills. To build a weekend cabin, he explained, his eyes lighting up as he started sketching on the back of an envelope. Michael, we haven't even bought our first house yet, and you're already planning a second one, I argued, completely baffled. Besides, vacation homes are empty 90% of the year and create headaches 100% of the time. He made his classic disgruntled architect face, the one he gets when I suggest that maybe, just maybe, a curved wall isn't a practical choice for a living room. It's not just for us, Jess. It's an investment. Think of the property value in 10 years. I'm thinking of the plumbing problems in 10 minutes, I shot back. We stared at each other for a tense moment before we both broke down, laughing. It was our first truly honest financial disagreement in 12 years. A strange but significant milestone. How were we supposed to resolve this now that we couldn't just secretly move money around and do whatever we wanted? This is the 15th house we've seen, and I swear to God, if one more realtor tells me this is a rare opportunity, I'm going to have a breakdown in the foyer, I whispered to Michael. We were trailing an aggressively cheerful agent named Brenda through what had to be the narrowest hallway in the history of residential construction. 3 weeks into our hunt for the perfect house in Montclair, and I now knew every neighborhood, every winding road, and probably every stray cat in Essex County. Each property had its own fatal flaw. It was either too small, charming, and cozy, according to the listings, too expensive, a premium investment, too far from the train station, just a brisk 40-minute walk, or looked like the set of a 1980s horror movie, vintage character, just needs a little TLC. And now, for the pièce de résistance, Brenda announced, flinging open the doors to the back deck with the dramatic flourish of a game show host. And then we were silent, because the view had stolen the words right out of our mouths. The entire Manhattan skyline was laid out before us, a glittering panorama of steel and light under the afternoon sun. Michael squeezed my hand, and we didn't have to say a thing. After 15 failed attempts, we finally felt it, that sense of home everyone talks about. Of course, the house needed work. The kitchen floor was a nightmare of harvest gold linoleum. The cabinets were begging to be put out of their misery, and every wall was crying out for a new coat of paint. But that view was worth every single dollar we had secretly squirreled away. "We're making an offer," Michael said definitively as we rode back to the city, both of us still in a daze. "But we have to negotiate. That asking price is aspirational, to say the least." I agreed, my brain immediately shifting into the intense spreadsheet mode I'd perfected over years of strategic saving. We can argue that the necessary renovations represent a significant upfront cost, that the market is showing signs of cooling, and that we're actively considering other properties, I suggested, already typing notes into my phone. I stopped short as a realization hit me. "Michael, do you see what's happening? We're strategizing, together, as a team." He smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "Took us 12 years, but we're finally figuring out how to be married." We both laughed, but there was a pang of sadness in it. For all the years we lived like roommates managing a joint venture instead of as true partners. How much time had we wasted protecting ourselves from each other, instead of building something together? And was this real, lasting change, or were we just caught up in the temporary thrill of newfound honesty? "To the left! No! Your other left! Watch the wall!" I was screaming instructions at the movers who were trying to navigate our sectional sofa up the narrow staircase of the new house. Moving is officially the fifth circle of hell, especially when it involves 12 years' worth of accumulated junk you swore you'd use one day. Michael was directing the placement of boxes with a clipboard in this century, while I tried to remember which box held the towels for our first desperately needed showers. We were exhausted, covered in sweat, and utterly, completely happy. 3 months after our great revelation, we were homeowners. The house was ours, bought and paid for with our combined secret funds, the most unexpected plot twist in our 12-year story. "I thought we should do something symbolic," Michael said that night. We were sitting on cardboard boxes on our new deck, eating pizza straight from the carton and watching the city lights flicker to life across the river. He pulled 2 small golden keys from his pocket. They're the keys to our old safe deposit boxes. I thought we could throw them into the river as a symbol that we're done with secrets. I raised my eyebrows, surprised by the unexpected romanticism from my relentlessly practical husband. "That's incredibly sweet, and also probably terrible for the local marine life," I teased, but I was genuinely touched. We stood at the edge of the deck, counted to 3, and hurled the keys into the night. We never heard them splash. They probably landed in our new neighbor's prize-winning petunias. Our financial life has been completely overhauled. We now have a shared Google sheet, lovingly titled the WTF Fund, Where's the Fund, that we update religiously. We have weekly money meetings to go over expenses and investments. It sounds rigid, but we make it fun, always with a bottle of wine and appetizers, turning it into a kind of nerdy date night. The hardest part wasn't the logistics. It was rewiring our brains to think in terms of our money instead of my money and his money. Years of secrecy left scars. Just last week, I instinctively hid the receipt for a new pair of shoes I bought, only to force myself to show him minutes later, shamefacedly admitting I was still unlearning the old habit. He completely understood, and confessed he'd done the same thing with a new drone he bought online. They are small slips on the long road to total transparency. Rome wasn't built in a day, and after a decade of practice, neither is a truly honest marriage. "Okay, let me get this straight," said Claire, my oldest friend, stirring her espresso martini with one of those paper straws that dissolves into pulp after 10 minutes. "You two hid money from each other for over a decade, found out on the same day, and instead of calling divorce lawyers, you called a real estate agent?" We were at our usual monthly happy hour spot in the West Village, and I had finally worked up the nerve to tell her the whole insane story. I explained how our mutual deception had, in the most ironic twist imaginable, brought us closer than ever. "So now you're what? Financial gurus for dysfunctional couples?" she asked, her eyes wide as she tried to process this massive shift in my previously predictable life. "I mean, seriously, what's next for you two?" "Not officially," I replied, "but we've somehow stumbled into helping 3 other couples get their financial lives in order without them having to go through our whole Shakespearean drama first." It had started with David and Sarah, friends of Michael's from his firm. After hearing a heavily edited version of our story during a housewarming BBQ on our new deck, we omitted the exact dollar amounts to avoid sounding like we were bragging. They asked for help with their own money issues. "You two seem to have learned the hard way what most of us never figure out," David had said. "How to talk about money without it turning into World War III. He was right. Our chaotic journey had accidentally made us experts on this incredibly sensitive topic. We started by creating a personalized budget spreadsheet for them, and then for another couple. Michael, with his architect's precision, and me, with my color-coded organizational flair, made a surprisingly effective team. The reactions we get when we tell our story are always a wild mix of shock. "You hid how much?" An unexpected confession. "Actually, I have a credit card my husband doesn't know about." We realized we'd struck a universal nerve. For so many couples, money is a bigger taboo than politics, religion, or even sex. A few friends pulled away, as if our newfound honesty was a contagious disease that threatened to expose their own secrets. But others drew closer, finding in us a safe space to discuss financial anxieties they'd never voiced to anyone. In our little impromptu financial therapy sessions, we learned to draw a crucial line between privacy and secrecy. As Michael explained it to one couple, privacy is not telling your wife exactly how much you spent on your fantasy football league. Secrecy is hiding the entire bank account that funded it. That simple distinction has sparked more tears and breakthroughs than any direct advice ever could. Who knew our biggest failure as a couple would become our greatest asset to the people around us? "Are you absolutely 100% sure you want to do this?" Michael asked, pulling the car up to the curb in front of an imposing NYU building in Greenwich Village. I was clutching the acceptance letter for a master's program in digital marketing, something I'd dreamed of for years, but always dismissed because the timing wasn't right, which was code for, I didn't think we could afford it. Terrified is probably a more accurate word, I admitted, watching students who looked impossibly young and self-assured stream through the main entrance. What if I'm the only fossil in the class? What if they find out my intern had to explain TikTok to me last week? Michael squeezed my hand, giving me that smile that says he believes in you, even when you don't. "You're going to crush it, Jess. You've always been the smartest person I know." It felt strange and wonderful to use our money to invest in ourselves, not just in stocks and bonds. While I was hitting the books, Michael rediscovered his passion for woodworking, a hobby he'd abandoned years ago because the tools are expensive and they take up too much space. We converted half of our new garage into a proper workshop for him. One Friday, he came inside beaming with pride, carrying a beautifully crafted solid oak bookshelf. "For all your new marketing textbooks and my old architectural magazines," he announced. I ran my hand over the smooth finish, genuinely floored by his talent. "It's gorgeous. We could sell these, you know. We could start a side hustle." The idea seemed to dawn on him for the first time. A business? Together? The surprise in his voice was a testament to how new this concept of being a true team still was for us. Later, during a candlelit dinner on the deck, we have a deck now, celebrating 6 months in our new home, Michael casually brought up the idea of expanding the family. I nearly choked on my wine. "Are we talking about a puppy or a human baby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Kids had always been a deferred dream, something we'd tabled using financial instability as a convenient excuse. "Both, eventually," he said, surprising me again. "But I was thinking we could start with the human. We're not getting any younger, and things have never been more stable." I was silent for a long moment, processing the seismic shift in his perspective. Our new house suddenly felt even bigger, full of empty rooms and possibilities waiting to be filled. "We could turn the spare bedroom into a nursery," I heard myself say, my mind already picturing dinosaur wallpaper. Michael's face broke into a wide grin as he reached for my hand across the table. "And I could build the crib." A real joint project, unlike any other. A project we never could have even considered when we were living in separate financial universes. Was it possible that our years of mutual distrust had, in some twisted way, perfectly prepared us for this moment of absolute faith in each other? "It's been exactly 1 year today," Michael said, raising his glass. We were sitting at the very same dining table where our world had imploded. Everything was the same, yet completely different. The same crate and barrel wedding china we only used on special occasions, the same bottle of dry Cabernet Sauvignon. But we were in a different house, with a different view, and we were fundamentally different people. 1 year since we discovered we were two financial spies sharing a bed, I joked. A year since our lives were irrevocably altered by the discovery that we were both masterminds of the same elaborate lie. If you could go back and change anything, what would it be? I asked, as we ate the cheesecake we'd picked up from Junior's. Michael swirled the wine in his glass, thinking for a long moment. Surprisingly, nothing, he said finally. If we had been honest from the start, we'd probably have more money, but we wouldn't have this, he said, looking at me. This understanding of fear and trust and what it actually means to be partners. Some lessons, I guess, you just can't afford to learn the easy way. I stared at him, genuinely surprised. My husband, the pragmatic architect, was suddenly sounding like a philosopher. Besides, he continued with a smirk, you probably would have spent all of it on Kate Spade bags anyway. I laughed and threw my napkin at him. And you would have bought up half of the Catskills to build weekend cabins that would only ever exist on your blueprints. Later that night, out on the deck, we watched the lights of the city glitter across the river. I took a mental inventory of the most transformative year of our lives. The new house, the personal passions we were finally pursuing, the friends who had drawn closer, and the ones who had drifted away. The new, transparent financial routines that now felt as normal as brushing our teeth. The difficult conversations we finally had about our deepest fears and wildest dreams. And above all, the staggering irony that we had to catch each other in a massive lie to finally start being truthful. The secrets that should have destroyed our marriage ended up being the foundation for a new one, I said, almost to myself. Michael wrapped his arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer. Maybe that's how relationships are supposed to work, he mused. You don't avoid the storms. You learn how to navigate them together. We watched a lone ferry glide across the dark water, its lights blinking like a private Morse code, sending a message only it understood. Just like us, charting a new course in unfamiliar waters, but finally in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, with no secret accounts to pull us off course. And what about you, who has followed our story this far? Would you have done the same? Would you keep a financial secret from your partner, building a double life of hidden accounts and secret investments? Or perhaps you're already doing it, feeling that familiar pang of recognition as you read about our deceptions. I sometimes wonder how many couples are out there, smiling at each other across the dinner table while hiding bank statements in the back of a drawer. Our mutual distrust, ironically, led us to a level of honesty we never would have achieved otherwise. But do we really have to risk losing everything to appreciate transparency? And what if I had only discovered his account, without having my own ace in the hole? Would the outcome have been the same? Tell me, have you ever hidden money from someone you love or discovered they were hiding it from you? And more importantly, in the end, was it worth it?